Stop whatever you are doing right now, because what I am about to tell you is going to completely change how you see this couple. The heat is on, and I mean it is absolutely scorching right now. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are facing the single worst week of their entire post-royal life, and you are about to see exactly how every single domino is falling, one after another, in slow motion, right in front of your eyes. Charity disaster, reputational disaster, professional disaster, financial disaster. Every single one of those is landing at the exact same moment, on the exact same week, all at the very same time. And the result is something nobody on the outside saw coming until right now. And I want you to do something for me. I want you to hold one question in your mind as you watch the next few minutes unfold. The question is this: what happens to a marriage when the only thing that ever held it together suddenly disappears? Keep that question close, because everything you are about to hear circles back to it, and the answer is far darker than the loved-up photographs would ever lead you to believe. Because here is the part that changes everything. Sources are saying the couple are so deeply unhappy, so completely at the end of their rope, that it has erupted into a massive blazing bust-up over their plans for this summer. And you need to stay with me, because by the end of this, you are going to understand not just what they fought about, but why this particular fight may be the one that finally cracks the entire foundation of their marriage wide open. But here is where it gets interesting. This week, Heat magazine has finally gone there. They have run a front-page cover story, the kind of cover seen by millions of people standing in supermarket checkout lines, and that cover reveals the specific argument at the center of all of this. It was about Harry's demands for Meghan to return to the United Kingdom. Pay attention to this next part, because it is the detail that turns a rumor into a story with teeth. Radar Online say they have independently backed this up, and they have gone one step further. They are reporting that the marriage is now imploding as a direct result of this enormous row. Their words, not mine. RadarOnline.com can reveal that the strain between the Sussexes has increased sharply in recent weeks, and that the argument took place just before Meghan's pre-planned trip to Geneva. So let me walk you through exactly what these reports are claiming, piece by piece, because the timeline is where the real drama lives. Heat magazine's source says that things boiled over just hours before Meghan flew out to Geneva. Picture that for a moment. Really picture it. The bags are half-packed and sitting open on the bed. The car is idling in the driveway. The clock is ticking down toward a flight that will not wait. And instead of a warm goodbye, instead of a kiss at the door and a promise to call when she lands, you get a screaming match echoing through a mansion that costs millions of dollars and apparently cannot buy a single moment of peace. And here is the kicker. The source says that afterward, Harry and Meghan did not speak for a while. Not a text, not a call, not a single word. Silence. The kind of cold, brittle silence that hangs in a marriage like smoke after a fire, the kind that seeps into every room and refuses to clear. And let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a house that quiet, when the quiet itself is the loudest thing in it? Because that, reportedly, is the house Harry was left sitting in. While she was gone, Meghan's mother, Doria, was staying at the house. And so Meghan was reduced to FaceTiming in order to speak to her own children, holding up a glowing little screen in a hotel room in Switzerland, while the man she married sat in that same Montecito house, stewing, replaying the fight in his head. Now think carefully about why this fight happened in the first place, because the why is absolutely everything here. Harry, the reports say, had been getting incredibly sentimental in the run-up to their 8th wedding anniversary. At the very same time, he was desperately, almost frantically, trying to map out one big family summer in Europe. He has apparently been carving out time at Balmoral so that his father, King Charles, could finally see Archie and Lilibet. Let that sink in for a second. A grandfather, possibly running out of time, and 2 grandchildren who barely know the sound of his voice. The plan, according to these reports, was for Harry and Meghan to base themselves in Portugal for the summer and then spend precious time at Balmoral. It sounds idyllic, does it not? But here is where the whole thing detonates. Meghan has apparently heard that William and Kate have told Harry, in no uncertain terms, that the Sussexes are simply not welcome. The reports claim William and Kate refused to have their family sanctuary disrupted by what they reportedly call Hollywood drama. And when Meghan heard those 2 words, Hollywood drama, the source says she flipped. A normal argument turned into a full-blown showdown. Tensions, they say, are now at an all-time high. But hold that thought, because what came next was a performance, and I want you to see it for what it really was. You will remember that Meghan returned from Geneva, and suddenly there was an enormous song and dance made about the couple's wedding anniversary. The loved-up posts, the captions dripping with affection. I believe that was part of what I called the flood the zone strategy. It was desperately designed to scream to the world, nothing happened here, move along, everything is perfect. It does not matter that only about 10 people actually showed up. But here is the question that haunts me. What if that performance was not just for us? What if Meghan was trying to convince herself that things were on track in this relationship? The Heat report continues, and I want you to hear this exactly. Despite the loved-up post on Instagram, we are told the couple are at a standoff over their summer, as well as the Balmoral trip. The plan had been for Meghan to join her husband in the United Kingdom in July for a one-year countdown event tied to the 2027 Invictus Games taking place in Birmingham. Now stay right here, because this is the moment the wheels come off. The source says Meghan has now told Harry to go without her. Read that again. Go without me. They add that the bust-up between Meghan and Harry was a big one, and that she is digging her heels in hard. She has told Harry to travel to the United Kingdom alone, because there is, in her words, no way she would be joining him. She does not want to put herself or the children through the drama. And of course, this is all crashing down in the very same week that the couple have been buried under an avalanche of negative coverage on both sides of the Atlantic. And this is the part where it stops being about hurt feelings and starts being about survival. Star Magazine and Page 6 are both reporting that the couple are effectively going broke and that the breadwinner Meghan is starting to panic. Think about that word, panic, not concern. Not caution, panic. Because when the deals dry up, when the brand deals stall, when the streaming projects underperform, there is no royal treasury standing behind you anymore. There is no institution to absorb the shock. There is no safety net stretched out beneath the tightrope. There is just a mortgage, a sprawling lifestyle, a small army of staff and security, and a runway that is getting shorter every single month. And nothing, absolutely nothing, applies pressure to a marriage quite like watching the money run out while the bills keep coming. Money problems have a way of dragging every other resentment up to the surface with them. Every old argument, every unspoken grievance, they all come flooding back the moment the bank balance starts to slide. So, let me bring in someone who understands this on a level the rest of us simply cannot. We know, do we not, that this couple have always had their big arguments. Harry himself admitted it in his book, Spare. He wrote that Meghan had basically warned him, if you ever speak to me like that again, it is over. And here is the chilling part. At that moment, when he wrote those words, they were actually happy compared to where they are right now. There were no real issues in the marriage when Harry was writing Spare. They were at a far earlier, far sweeter stage than the one they are trapped in today. So yes, of course there have always been constant bust-ups. That is the whole point. And of course there is tension over Harry's deep desire to spend time in the United Kingdom. But here is the trap Meghan now finds herself in. And it is a beautiful, brutal trap with no obvious way out. She knows she needs to come back too. She is going to have to turn back on her own word, swallow her own pride, and walk straight into the lion's den. And she is going to have to do it for the coldest, least romantic reason of all, money. Cold, hard, draining away money. But does anything about this Heat report, apparently backed up by Radar Online, actually surprise the people who have watched this couple from the very beginning? And the answer is not. Not even slightly. Not for 1 second. Because this is simply an insight into what we are going to see happen again and again and again, on a loop for years. Think back to when Harry was writing Spare. That was the one shining moment when they were perfectly aligned in purpose. They were both pointed at the exact same target, like two archers drawing the same bow. They both wanted to put a stain on the royal family. They did not want to show the institution even a sliver of grace. They wanted to completely tear apart the life Harry had lived in the United Kingdom, brick by brick. But here is what changed everything. Harry has now turned over. He is, I genuinely believe, feeling deeply regretful. And the moment that regret crept in, they stopped being aligned in purpose. And once two people are no longer aligned in purpose, they will clash. This is not the end of the arguments, this is the beginning of many, many more. And that leads to the only question that really matters. How long can a relationship survive when the two people in it are pointed in opposite directions? I do not think very long at all. And here is why, and this is the part that I think most people get completely wrong. Harry is losing something that can never be bought back. His children are growing up with no knowledge of who he truly is. No knowledge of the world that shaped him. No knowledge of his future, or the life he once had in the United Kingdom. Their entire childhoods will be spent in America. And Harry will never, ever be able to give his children even a taste of the things he experienced when he himself was a boy. Imagine that as a parent. Imagine watching your children grow up as strangers to your own history. This, I believe, is profoundly hurtful to Harry. He is only now beginning to see it clearly. He is missing out. His children are missing out. And Meghan, he is starting to feel, is controlling absolutely everything no matter what he actually wants. So this is only the beginning for him. And it is going to get so much worse, especially as the children grow older. Picture the future for a moment, because this is where it becomes truly tragic, and this is the part I need you to really see. As Archie and Lilibet grow up, they will become more and more aware of the family on the other side of the ocean. They will start asking questions, they will see the photographs, they will learn about the cousins they never get to play with. Charlotte, George, Louis, all of them gathering together at Christmas, at Easter, at summer holidays in the Scottish Highlands, building the kind of childhood memories that bind a family together for life, learning exactly who they are inside the most famous family on earth. And Harry's children will have who, exactly? Who will be standing in those photographs beside them? Nobody from that world. They will be completely isolated, cut off, with no real tight bond to the royal image that made Harry who he is, and who he still is today, whether he wants to admit it to himself or not. And one day, those children are going to be old enough to understand exactly what they were denied. Imagine being the parent who has to look them in the eye when that day comes. So I believe Harry is going to grow more and more resentful toward Meghan. He is going to push back against what she says more and more often, because the longing for your own culture, your own history, the very way you experienced your own life, that longing weighs on a person like a stone. He is going to watch his children lose out completely, and he is not going to be able to stomach it. He will go against her. They will fight continually. And it is going to become a huge, enormous problem. And I can say all of this with certainty, because some of us have lived it, some of us have stood exactly where Harry is standing right now, and from that vantage point, I can tell you, it is going to be brutally hard for him. So the question becomes, can he simply plow through it? Can he discard his own feelings and carry on? I do not think so. I do not think so for 1 second. I think he is going to be consumed by a desperate longing for his children to experience his life, their life, in the United Kingdom. But here is the cruel twist. Harry does not really have a choice anymore, does he? At least not for the moment. He has to cope. And yet I do not believe he is coping. Not emotionally. Not physically, because it is no longer as simple as just walking out, just walking away. Those days are gone. So what does a man do when he cannot leave and cannot stay happy? I think Harry is trying desperately to work on his mental state. I think this is weighing on him every single day. He may be talking about this endlessly in therapy, searching for a way around a problem that has no clean exit. But here is something I have noticed about Harry. He always seems to need someone to tell him what to do. And I suspect that the king, and perhaps others, may quietly be trying to reconcile with him. I do not know that for certain. I know William is not, but I believe Harry is having conversations. Something is pulling him back. Something is drawing him toward his family, toward seeing his father before it is too late. And here is the detail that breaks your heart. The detail I want you to sit with for just a moment. We have to remember that Harry carries an enormous, unhealed regret about what happened with his mother before she passed. Think about a young boy who never got to say the things he needed to say. Think about a grief that never fully closed, that just calcified inside him and became part of his bones. And I believe Harry can feel it happening all over again, this time with his father. The same dread. The same ticking clock. The same horrifying sense that the window is closing and he is on the wrong side of an ocean? That is the urgency burning inside him right now. That is why he is so frantic to get back to the United Kingdom, to have his children meet their grandfather while there is still time on the clock. This is Harry trying desperately, with everything he has, not to repeat the single worst pain of his entire life. So the pull he is feeling right now is not a mild preference. It is a gravitational force. And it is going to be a war inside him. A war that no therapist and no amount of money in California can win for him. Because Meghan, let us be honest, is one tough cookie. When it comes to not allowing Harry to take those children and to not going back herself, she appears immovable. I think she has been quietly toying with the idea of returning. But I do not think she is sure she can handle the rejection she would feel. And make no mistake, there would be a tremendous amount of rejection waiting for her in the United Kingdom. It is a genuinely impossible situation they have built for themselves. And we all knew this day was coming, did we not? Be honest with yourself. We knew it the moment they boarded that so-called freedom flight, the moment the wheels lifted off and they waved goodbye to 1,000 years of history. Everyone could see it coming, like a storm on the horizon that only the people inside the house refused to acknowledge. His friends tried to warn him, his relatives tried to warn him. Even commentators tried to warn him, again and again, because it was so painfully, achingly obvious what was hurtling toward him. And here is the part that cuts the deepest of all. There is going to be an element of shame buried deep in Harry's core, not because he failed to listen to commentators, who cares about commentators, but because he failed to listen to his brother, his grandmother, his own father, the people who actually loved him, who had no agenda, and who turned out to be completely devastatingly right. They were right, and he knows it. And there is no feeling in the world quite like the slow dawning realization that the people you pushed away were the ones telling you the truth. He is going to have to set aside that shame in order to move forward. He is going to have to humble himself, to admit that he made a colossal mistake, and to begin rebuilding his life, because he is not happy. And here is the hard truth. He will never be happy living an isolated life in Montecito, because deep down that is not the life he wants at all. He wants his family back. He wants his children to know where they come from, and at this rate, it does not look like he is going to get any of it. So what does that do to a man emotionally, mentally, when the walls close in like this? Here is the dark possibility that nobody wants to say out loud, but that I think we have to be honest about. I can see Harry suffering a complete breakdown. I can see a man who has lost his mother, lost his country, lost his standing, and now feels he is losing his marriage and the future he imagined for his children. I can see him struggling tremendously, even reaching for substances to numb a pain that has no other exit. I think it could get genuinely, frighteningly dark for him, and I fear that it will. I truly do. But now I want to show you something even stranger. Because while all of this private agony unfolds behind closed doors in Montecito, a very public, very deliberate game is being played thousands of miles away in the press. And once you see it, I promise you, you will never be able to unsee it again. Have you noticed a pattern? Because once I point it out, you are going to start seeing it everywhere. Every single time the going gets truly tough for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, like clockwork, certain corners of the press swing into action. I have been reporting on this for a long time now, and not everyone wants to believe me, so let me lay it out as plainly as I possibly can. The moment things become really difficult for Harry and Meghan, right on cue, a fresh wave of stories appears, and the goal is always the same. Change the subject, move the narrative. Throw a bright, shiny distraction into the air, and hope the public's gaze follows it. Now, I do not think it actually works. The public are far smarter than that. But it is so blindingly obvious to me what is going on. And the clearest example of all is this next one, because it genuinely shocked me when I saw it. So let me show you exactly how strange this particular attack was. And remember, in this game, the headline is what matters most, because the headline is what millions of people see, and the headline is what spreads the message. The gist of it was this. A warning that Prince William and Catherine's latest worthy causes are, supposedly, a catastrophic mistake. A catastrophic mistake. And what is this supposedly catastrophic mistake? It turns out the target was Prince William's involvement in a major housing and homelessness initiative. Now, here is the sleight of hand. To call that a catastrophic mistake while saying nothing, absolutely nothing, about the genuinely catastrophic missteps Harry and Meghan have been making, including the disaster surrounding their charity work in Africa. That alone shows you precisely how targeted this really is. So here is the thrust of what was written. Embrace yourself, because it is an astonishing tirade. The writer questioned whether Prince William is even the right person to be involved in a housing initiative at all. So, to be clear, Prince William wanting to help end homelessness is somehow a bad thing. Why, you might ask? Well, the argument goes that such a privileged individual could never truly understand the difficulties he wants to help others overcome. That presenting himself as a housing champion is hollow, because unless you have personally been unable to buy a home, been evicted, or forced to rent, you cannot possibly comprehend how the lack of housing affects every single moment of your life. Now, stop right there, because this is a total misunderstanding of what charity even is, and I want to take it apart slowly so you see just how flimsy it is. Think about the logic for 1 second. If that is really how you are going to define who is allowed to help, then you could not support a cancer charity unless you had personally suffered from cancer. You could not support an AIDS charity unless you had personally suffered from AIDS. You could not fund a children's hospital unless you yourself were a sick child. You could not campaign for clean water unless you had personally died of thirst. The entire idea collapses the moment you apply it to literally anything else. And here is the most damning part. It would render every single bit of Princess Diana's charity work completely useless. Yes, it was powerful when Princess Diana spoke about bulimia and could say, "Personally, I have suffered from this." But she did not need to have been blown up by a landmine to campaign against landmines. She did not need to be dying of AIDS to transform how the entire world treated AIDS patients with a single handshake. So this is an intellectually dishonest argument from start to finish. But the attack kept going. The claim was that William cannot possibly know how it feels to not have your own things around you, to be at the mercy of someone else for the basic appliances you need to live. And here is the tell. That kind of writing almost always comes from a place of personal grievance, from someone who has had their own hard times with renting and being pushed out of homes, and who is now projecting all of that onto a man they have never met. The piece sneered that our future king has never lived in the real world, never had a deposit withheld over some trivial dispute, never been left waiting around for a landlord who never turns up. It allowed that his intentions are, perhaps, honorable, but then it argued that just as serving food in a soup kitchen for a brief photo opportunity does not cut it, neither does playing at being a benefactor. It is all about optics, the writer claimed, and here is why that is a completely nonsensical, self-defeating argument. What that writer is effectively admitting, right there in black and white, is that in their view, Prince William can never win. Not ever. There is no path. If he shows up in person and is photographed doing the work, well, that is just a cheap photo opportunity and it does not count. But if he stays out of the spotlight and quietly gives away literally hundreds of millions of dollars, then somehow that does not count either, because he has not personally suffered enough to deserve the credit. Do you see the trap that has been built? Heads they win, tails he loses. There is no move on the board he could make that they would ever, under any circumstances, accept as genuine. And when you build an argument like that, you are not really analyzing a man's charity work at all. You are just announcing your own bias and dressing it up as journalism. And then, and you will not believe this, it gets even stranger, because then the attack turned to his face, his actual face. The writing claimed that William's concerned expression does indeed show empathy, but that until you have walked the walk, you should not talk the talk. It conceded that he had visited a homelessness charity as a child with his mother, Diana. It conceded that he had once slept rough for a single night, years ago. And then it delivered the line that detonates the entire argument. The suggestion that we should have more respect for him only if he handed over the palaces themselves and turned them into houses for the homeless and pushed other members of the family out of their grand apartments? Because how many homes do these people really need? And right there, do you see what just happened? The entire thesis collapses in on itself, because here is the simple fact that the writer either did not know or chose to ignore. Prince William does not own those palaces. He cannot give them away. He cannot move anybody out of a grand apartment. The only person in the entire country who could do any of that is King Charles himself, not William. So the big dramatic demand at the heart of the whole attack was aimed at a man who has no power to grant it. The argument was not just unfair, it was built on something that is not even possible. I genuinely could not believe this was published by a serious outlet, and here is the real point. When someone is this desperate to launch a wild attack on Prince William, the facts simply do not get a seat at the table. There is no editor in the world who should have let that demand through, because the moment you check it against reality, it falls apart in your hands, and yet it ran. It even got picked up and circulated as if it were sober, accurate reporting on the royal family, and I just wish more people would wake up to what is really going on here. Now, let me be blunt about something. When you first read an attack like that, you almost cannot believe it is real. For real? That is the level you have sunk to? That is the sound of someone searching desperately for any criticism they can find, because they have nothing real to stand on. It is the behavior of someone so completely consumed by bias that they cannot bear to watch good work succeed, no matter how simple and decent that work actually is. Think about it honestly. What more can this man possibly do? William was born into a situation he did not choose. And, rather than coast through it, he wants to do something meaningful to help people who are struggling. Thank goodness for that. But the response from some journalist is to twist it into something sinister, to set an impossible test that nobody could ever pass, where, unless he gives away everything he does not even own, his efforts mean nothing. That is so absurd it is almost funny. You can see plainly that the people writing this are pushing a deliberately negative narrative. They do not want to see this man do genuine good for ordinary people. It is laughable, really. It is almost impossible to take seriously. Come on now. You are reaching so far, your arm is about to come out of its socket. And the constant refusal by some commentators to even call Catherine by her actual name, the relentless nagging at everything she and William do, it forces you to question the very integrity of the journalism itself. Because this is not fair, it is not balanced, it is a campaign. But here is the thing. This is exactly why these attacks have to be called out every single time. This is precisely why people should not be blindly trusting the mainstream media on these issues. And it is why people should increasingly be turning to independent voices who are willing to deliver the truth without an agenda. Because it is not just one outlet doing this. And this next part genuinely shocked me. The Daily Express has now joined the very same campaign. The one some have started calling Operation Thor. And if you think that sounds like a conspiracy theory, just watch how perfectly the timing lines up, because that is the thing about these efforts. The timing always gives them away. Look at the headline they ran. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are missed in the United Kingdom, and they must return as working royals. They must. The pair, the article claims, could have been a powerhouse for the royal family. And this was written by one of their senior news reporters, a staff journalist named Alicia McNamara. And trust me when I tell you this. Articles like this do not appear in a national newspaper by coincidence. They do not slip through by accident. This is the Daily Express, deliberately, calculatedly changing its editorial line. And I found this article totally ludicrous. So, let me take you through the lowlights. The writer claimed that, for her, Harry and Meghan have a relatability to them? That they are not perfect and do not pretend to be. That this somehow makes them just like anyone else, and I would argue the exact opposite, and I would argue it loudly. They absolutely do pretend to be perfect. The curated photographs, the polished documentaries, the carefully staged glimpses into a life that is supposedly so authentic and so real. That is the entire problem. The relatability is the performance. And underneath it, there is a striking absence of any real authenticity whatsoever. You cannot build your entire brand on being open and honest while controlling every single frame the public is ever allowed to see. She added that Harry, like many families across the United Kingdom and the world, has famously struggled with family troubles and quarrels, and that most of us are lucky enough not to have ours plastered all over the news. She wrote that Meghan was not raised royal, that she lived a life away from the limelight before becoming an actress and joining the family. Then she claimed that Harry and Meghan must be regretting their decision to step away, given that even more scandals have hit the family since their departure. She argued that Prince Andrew has come off far worse than the pair ever could, with genuine public uproar. Meanwhile, she said, Harry, who has 2 young children, can barely secure proper protection and does not seem welcome back in the United Kingdom anytime soon. Sadly, she added. And then the kicker. Surely, compared to Andrew, anything involving Harry and Meghan is water under the bridge by now. So please, she begged, let us send Andrew to America and bring Harry and Meghan back. And do you see the trick being played there? It is the oldest trick in the book. You take the worst behaved figure you can find, you point at him, and then you say, well, compared to him, these 2 are practically saints. But that is not how accountability works. The fact that someone else may have done something worse does not erase what Harry and Meghan themselves chose to do. It does not wipe the slate clean. It does not rewind the tape. And the public are far too sharp to fall for a comparison that conveniently ignores everything that actually happened. Now here's the part that struck me as completely nuts. Her claim that Harry and Meghan are just so happy that they stepped away. Well, if that is true, then why are they so utterly desperate to worm their way back in? Why are they so desperate to claw back state-funded security? We do not want them. So, why has the Daily Express suddenly enlisted in Operation Thor? Because this is an article that simply does not reflect the views of the British public. Which means it is no coincidence at all that they chose to publish it, and the public know it. They are not fooled for a second. When this question was put directly to ordinary people, the simple question, are Harry and Meghan actually missed? The answer came roaring back, overwhelmingly, no, they are not missed. Not even close. It is, frankly, an insult to even suggest otherwise. People remember everything. They remember every single thing that happened, every interview, every accusation, every carefully aimed dagger. And what is being attempted here is the careful, cynical planting of seeds. The slow, patient drip of a narrative that whispers it is all water under the bridge now, that we want them back, that surely it is time to forgive and forget. But that is simply not what people feel in their hearts. A vast amount of damage was done by Harry and Meghan, real and lasting damage, and the British people have not forgotten a single moment of it. You do not forget being called something you are not. You do not forget watching your most cherished institutions dragged through the mud on streaming television for the entertainment of the world. This is an effort to manufacture consent, to wear people down, to get them to shrug and mutter, well, fine, let us just forget everything that happened and move on. And that is not the right thing to do, because so much harm was caused, and pretending otherwise rewards the very behavior that caused it. The idea that the public should simply welcome them home with open arms, after the racism claims, after what Harry did to his own brother, after what he did to the institution that raised him, it is almost an insult to the very people whose names were dragged through the mud by this couple. The British public were the ones disdained here. They were the collateral damage. And to ask them to just smile and forget it is genuinely offensive. People are not going to forget, and neither am I. And that precisely is why people should be turning to independent coverage. Because honestly, you simply cannot trust the mainstream media on these issues anymore. They cannot be trusted now, and I know people will protest, but these papers were once seen as royalist, as monarchist, and I would say, yes, they once were, but now they are doing the dirty work on behalf of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and they are attempting to gaslight the entire British public. No thank you. So, here is where we land. After everything you have just heard, a marriage reportedly imploding behind closed doors in Montecito, a husband haunted by regret pulled toward a homeland, and a father he fears he is running out of time to reach, a wife digging in her heels, terrified of the rejection that waits for her across the ocean, children growing up as strangers to half of who they are, half of where they come from, half of the story of their own name. And all the while, a coordinated machine in the press working overtime to rewrite the story, to soften the ground, to quietly convince a public that has not forgotten that somehow they should. Every piece of this puzzle, the private heartbreak and the public spin, is moving in the same direction at the same time. And that is not a coincidence. That is a story reaching its breaking point. But the public has not forgotten, and now neither will you. Because everything that was set in motion on that freedom flight is finally coming home to roost, exactly as so many of us said it would, exactly as we were mocked for predicting. The regret, the isolation, the money draining away, the children growing up as strangers to half of who they are, the frantic, doomed attempts to come back through a door that has quietly been closing for years.